Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. Let's see who we have on tonight. We have Ava. Great to see you, Ava. Hope you're well. We have Draconic. Great to see you. Raven 1983 Witch. Great to see you too. Gene T. Great to have you on. Mr. Rolling 1964. Great to see you. Nico. Great to have you on. Hope you're well. Colin. Great to see you. EGF 1000. Hi there. We have Enzo the God. Great to see you, Enzo. Roshin. Great to see you. Linan. Great to have you on. Hella, great to see you. Hope you're well. We have Ruth, great to see you. Hella asks, hey Max, what whiskey you decide on for your birthday? It was, I forget the name, I don't have it in front of me, but it was, of course, a wonderful whiskey from Scotland. I have a good selection of whiskies from Scotland, thanks to somebody who's helping out a huge amount with the channels. They send me bottles of whiskey from time to time, and I love it. It's wonderful. Thanks so much. We have Loner Weirdo, great to see you. FSM is the dog, great to have you on. We have Killer, thanks so much for moderating, Killer. We have Eddie, great to see you. Eddie, Pete, who else have we got? We have Mark, great to see you. Young Ralph, you, Akizmad, great to see you, Akizmad. Jem, great to have you on. CJM, great to see you. Sophie, great to have you on. Chatty Rat, great to see you. We also have Galadrina, great to see you. Marvin, and everyone else. Well, we're up to 309 viewers, so I can't say hello to everyone, but I want to say hello to everyone. I can't say hello to everyone individually, but welcome to the live stream. Hope everyone had a great weekend. And what a mess. So we're going to, of course, cover a lot of things tonight. Random Scottish History, great to see you. Casper, great to see you. Magic, great to have you on. Hope you're well. I'll just try and shout out to people as I see them on the chat. So what a disaster. So as I was coming onto the stream, there was some stories dropping. Bank of England urged to extend emergency bond buying scheme. So the Bank of England has been urged by commentators, by the markets to get involved here. But before we get to that story, it says here, this was at about 9 p.m. or almost 8 p.m. It says here, Andrew Bailey, the Governor of the Bank of England, says that the emergency intervention in the bond market will come to an end on Friday. He tells pension funds, which are heavily invested in UK debt, you've only got 3 days left now. You've got to get this done. And as soon as he said that, the pound dropped like a lead balloon. It says here, gosh, just look at what happened to the pound when Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey told investors its emergency support will definitely end on Friday. You've got 3 days left. Okay, and you can see exactly what happened to the pound. It's not as bad as it was when Kwasi Kwarteng released his statement in the House of Commons, was it back on the 23rd of September with the mini budget. That was 108. Now it's 109. But the reaction it went from 111 down to 109 against the dollar. That's bad. So the market is responding as we would imagine. The Bank of England says we're not going to do any more. You're on your own. And now the ball is obviously in Kwasi Kwarteng's court. What is he going to do? He's going to have to bring forward probably his statement, his report, which was supposed to be on the 31st of October. You can't wait until the end of the month. 3 weeks. No, you need to act now. Otherwise, the pound is going to continue to suffer. And the bond market, what's going to happen to the bond market? So it says here, of course, this happened all before. This report is from before. It says the Bank of England is facing growing calls to extend its emergency intervention, which obviously is not happening unless they do a U-turn. I don't know if the Bank of England is going to. Maybe the Bank of England is going to do U-turns like the government. Yeah, we're going to get involved in U-turns as well because they're so popular at the moment. Threadneedle Street announced an unexpected move to expand its bond buying program on Tuesday, saying further action was required to stave off a fire sale in the UK government bond market. In a second update to its bond buying scheme in as many days, it said it would start buying up index-linked gilts, a type of UK government bond that tracks inflation. And as we saw, this is going to end on Friday. What's going to happen on Friday remains to be seen. Probably there will be a statement from Kwasi Kwarteng, I would imagine. The UK government, stepping up its campaign to smooth over turbulence in markets, the bank said it purchased more than £3.3 billion of UK government bonds in its biggest single intervention since starting the emergency scheme 2 weeks ago. The UK government borrowing costs have risen to the highest levels since the financial market chaos triggered by Kwasi Kwarteng's mini-budget in September, despite renewed efforts to smooth over the turmoil. They spent 65 plus billion pounds to undo the damage of Kwasi Kwarteng's mini-budget. And that's gone. It's gone up in smoke. Magic, thanks so much for that super chat. Magic Quasi's best line today. Obviously, I'm very careful not to make unfunded spending commitments on the floor of the house. But that's exactly what he did. Thanks so much for that super chat. Completely ridiculous. It's, as FSM is saying, a hell in a handbasket. That's exactly what he did. What caused this entire... Well, it must be remembered that there were problems before this. So this was, in a sense, the straw that broke the market's back. But this was the biggest blow. This was the final blow, in a sense. The central bank was forced to step in last month amid a dramatic sell-off for long-dated government debt, with a promise to buy up £65 billion in government bonds in a scheme running until the 14th of October. However, city investors and the pensions industry warned the central bank would probably need to extend its emergency scheme beyond its planned expiry date at the end of this week, which is not going to happen, after a fresh rise in government borrowing costs on international markets amid concerns over the government's large unfunded tax cuts. So I think this is putting pressure. So the fact that the Bank of England, I think there's a lot of conflict going on between the Bank of England and the Treasury, the Chancellor and Andrew Bailey. Andrew Bailey is saying, you messed up, we're not here to fix your problems. And Kwasi Kwarteng and the government are probably pointing their finger at the Bank of England, saying, oh, you need to raise interest rates, you need to bring down inflation, you have to do your bit. And I don't think the Bank of England want to get blamed for this. VJ, thanks so much for that super chat. Great to see you on the stream. Max, a few streams ago, I told you that the Bank of England can't keep doing this, and all this stability last few days is due to the Bank of England buying gilts. I work for Bloomberg. Oh, wow. Great to have you on the stream. Thanks so much for your feedback. Can I ask if you'd be available to do a chat sometime, maybe a one-to-one, or you can join our Sunday roast? Love to get your insight on things. If you're willing to do that, no pressure, of course, but it'd be great to get an expert like yourself on to explain how these things work and what's happening. And you were proven right, of course. I remember you saying that it's all because of these of what the Bank of England is doing. And now that it's going to end, I'd love to know what traders and people in the city are thinking, because as we see according to this graph, well, currency traders are dumping the pound at the moment. Look how dramatic that drop is. Yes, it's only over a few hours, but it's still extremely concerning. Thanks VJ, thanks so much for that super chat. To add insult to injury, the IMF once again commented on this, and it's not a good sign if the IMF are getting involved. It says here, let me just check that you guys, yeah, you should be able to see it. IMF criticizes Kwarteng again over tax cuts and energy package. Kwasi Kwarteng came under fresh fire from the International Monetary Fund after the Washington-based organization said his tax cuts and energy support package had made the Bank of England's battle against inflation more difficult. The IMF used its prestigious World Economic Outlook to criticize the scale of the stimulus provided by the Chancellor and the blanket nature of the price cap on gas and electricity bills. It said the UK was on course for a sizable slowdown in growth from 3.6% this year to 0.3% in 2023, but said its forecasts had been made before Kwarteng delivered his mini budget on the 23rd of October. So it could be worse than that. The fiscal package is expected to lift growth somewhat above the forecast in the near term, when complicating the fight against inflation, the IMF said. Financial markets expect Threadneedle Street, the Bank of England, to raise interest rates currently at 2.25% by at least 0.75% percentage points at its next meeting in early November. Of course, if they increase interest rates, that's going to make mortgages more expensive, and it's going to deliver a lot of pain to people who are already struggling to pay their mortgages. And as I said before on other live streams, what's going to happen is if people are renting properties and they're paying mortgages for those properties, they're either going to raise the rents on the people who are renting to cover the extra cost in mortgages, or they're going to sell up. And that will mean people will either have to pay more, move, or end up homeless. Not a good way. None of this is good news. The World Economic Outlook noted the hostile market reaction to Kwasi Kwarteng's September package, which forced the Bank of England to announce emergency measures to halt a run on pension funds. In the United Kingdom, the announcement in September of large debt-financed fiscal loosening, including tax cuts and measures to deal with the high energy prices, was associated with a rise in gilt yields and a sharp currency depreciation that was later reversed, it said. Gilt yields are the return on the capital invested in buying government bonds. Rising yields mean government bonds are less in demand by investors, and the government's cost of borrowing increases. So if government borrowing increases, that means that there's less money available for public services. And unfortunately, what I think is going to happen is Kwasi Kwarteng is going to decide to reduce government spending probably on Friday. So when he might even do it before then, but probably that's what he's going to do when the Bank of England ends this support, this propping up of the market. So you're going to see, as we saw here, so when the Bank of England said we're going to stop buying these bonds on Friday, the Chancellor, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Kwasi Kwarteng, is going to have to say something. He's going to have to say probably, yeah, we're going to either raise taxes or we're going to cut government expenditure, and I think it will be the latter. And what impact will this have? Well, it will speed up a recession, because you need the government to spend money in the local economy. The government needs to be spending money for infrastructure. And also, because there is inflation at the moment, it means that local government will get less money. Regions will get less money. So it'll be more difficult for them to provide the support for ordinary people, to invest in new infrastructure. Things are going to come to a grinding halt, and that will mean job losses. Job losses, of course, mean less money for the Exchequer, which creates a sort of cycle. So it's not good news on any front here. Let me read some more of your comments, guys, before we continue. The Tories will need to launch a Kickstarter where one of the backers Backer's Pecs is being Prime Minister for a week. Yeah, it's a good idea, Pete. Yeah. I'm sure there's a few donors who'd be willing to line up. Or maybe not. Maybe nobody wants to get near this at all. And I have a video dropping tomorrow, I think it is, or maybe, yeah, I think it's tomorrow, where there's this hope that Rishi Sunak would come back. Rishi Sunak would take over from Kwasi Kwarteng and try and undo some of the damage. But I don't think he's going to do that because, oh my God, why is Angela Lansbury trending? I hope she's okay. Angela Lansbury, of course, Murder, She Wrote. But if he won't take over that, why would he want to dirty his hands? It's a poison chalice. And if he took over as Chancellor, then he'd be answerable to. He'd have to answer to Liz Truss, and he doesn't want. I don't think he wants to do that. And whatever policies he try and push through, Liz Truss would probably reject them. She's died, Max. No. I'm so sorry to hear that. Sadly, she's died. I'm sorry to hear that. She was quite old, but it's sad to see. Someone from, when I was growing up as a kid, I remember watching Murder, She Wrote, and what was that movie, Bedknobs and Broomsticks? She was really good. Anyway, moving on. 96, my goodness. Put Boris in the role. What's the worst that could happen? Yes. It's got so bad that you could probably imagine. Okay, well, what's the worst that could happen if you put Boris Johnson back in place? It would actually help the Conservative Party somewhat because they are 30 points down on the Labour Party. So the Labour are leading by 30 points. So I think replacing Truss with Johnson, a lot of the Tories would be very happy. They say, okay, there's a chance I can hold on to my seat. A lot of people would lose their seat. But what would that say for a party like the Conservatives? I don't think it... Probably internally they would like to bring Johnson back. They feel it would help them. But I don't think it would help the Conservative Party because the damage has already been done. And who would Boris Johnson put in as his Chancellor? Rishi Sunak once again? I don't think that's going to work either. Wasn't it? Rishi was blamed for being the Brutus of the situation. So she had a summer house in Cork. There's an amazing YouTube channel dedicated to Murder, She Wrote. Chianti and the Fava Beans, Murder, She Wrote, and how stupid it is. I know it's something when you were a kid growing up and watching this show, you didn't think much about the plot holes, but every time she arrives, it's like, don't murder someone if Jessica Fletcher is in the vicinity. Okay, just wait until she's left the hotel or left the area and then do the murdering. That's the moral of the story from the TV show. And then there were all these spin-offs as well, not spin-offs but copies as well. There was one about a priest who solved mysteries in his free time. I remember there was a Simpsons sketch where there was like, oh look, it's that TV show where there's that cop who solves crimes in his spare time. All these people, and it's amazing how they would have access to police files and stuff like that, or they would have connections with the police that would allow them to do these things. You sort of have to, there's a lot of disbelief has to be suspended while you watch these shows, but they are sort of entertaining. Vignay, thanks so much for that super chat. Yinye, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's in the national interest that Kwasi Kwarteng and Truss are removed ASAP. Labour would inherit the ruins. A Prioc victory the longer this continues. It is a case that some people have been saying, some on the Conservative side, hoping that the government would collapse, the Labour Party would take over this poison chalice, and within a few months that government would collapse, or at the next election, the Labour Party wouldn't be able to turn the economy around. People would be enthusiastic at the beginning, and then that enthusiasm would fade away, and then people would forget about what the Tories did, and they would vote them back into power. I don't know if that would work. Because I think the problem for the Tories at this stage is that they have damaged their reputation as being leaders on the economy. That's what they were always able to sell the public. They were able to. It's not whether it's true or not. It's just what you can sell. It's the perception, and the perception was that they were good with the economy. That's changed now. They're described as being terrible with the economy. So it's more a case of, you're losing your trump card. I think they have lost on every in every area. So when it comes to the environment, of course, they're behind Labour. When it comes to employment, unemployment, they're behind Labour. When it comes to the economy, behind Labour. When it comes to security, behind Labour. So they're behind Labour on, I think, pretty much everything, if not everything. And it's very difficult to come back from your strengths. And the strengths the Tories had was, trust us when it comes to the economy, don't trust Labour. And unless, if Labour take over and they make an absolute disaster of what, if it results in an absolute disaster, there's a chance that the Conservatives will get back in. But that's why I think it's important to push for proportional representation. If Keir Starmer wins a massive majority, he should be running with proportional representation. Thanks for that super chat. Satnav, great to see you on the stream. Thanks so much for that super chat as well. Starmer convinced Tory donors to jump ship. Yes, that's really interesting. I don't know how many have jumped, but at least one has, and he was a pretty big fish. Now, as I said before, some people will donate to a party because they agree with the ideology, or they believe this party is on the side of good. Others will donate to the party because they want something in return, or they want to keep they want to keep another party out of power. So they say, look, I don't like party B, I'm going to donate to party A so that they can get into power. And of course, there are the ones who want something in return. Oh, I'm going to donate to the party in order to get, a seat in the House of Lords or a PPE contract or something like that. But if I'm not a fan, definitely not a fan of millionaires and billionaires donating to political parties, because it undermines democracy. Because it should be you as an individual are allowed to vote. You have this privilege to vote, and you have the right to vote, and your vote should be as valuable as my vote or the next person's vote. You shouldn't be able to, skew the system by donating 10,000 or 100,000 or £500,000. That should not be possible. And of course, if you can do that, then you're undermining democracy. But if these donors are switching to the Labour Party, they feel the Labour Party are going to win, and they would like to either support the ideology, they would like to keep the Tories out, or some of them would like to have some sort of influence. They would like to be first in line if there are contracts being given out for public services, or for example, for infrastructure, or if there is privatization going on, they want to be on the side of that. And unfortunately, Labour have not been as vocal as they should be when it comes to nationalisation. I think it was what's his name, Streeting, who was talking about how, well, we need to also take advantage of the private sector when it comes to the NHS. So we need to have a public-private partnership in a sense when it comes to dealing with the backlog. No, I don't agree with that. Thanks so much, Satnav, and great to see you on the stream. We also have a super chat from Chianti and fava beans. I ate his liver with fava beans and a nice Chianti. Therese Coffee has no view on smoking. Strat, but she's a chain smoker who has accepted hospitality from the tobacco industry. Yeah, so this was, thanks so much for that super chat. Yeah, this is in relation to what she said this morning on, I think it was Nick Ferrari's show, where she is the most frustrating politician to listen to. Maybe second, Liz Truss comes second to Therese Coffey, because Therese Coffey is now the Deputy Prime Minister. Okay, so she can't say, I don't know about this or I don't know about that. So what she says is, I'm not aware of this law or whatever. And then she starts talking about, so she's asked a question, do you support changing the law to allow parents to smoke in their cars? So to allow parents to smoke in their cars if children are present in the car. And her response is something like, well, there are cars and there are laws about smoking in cars. Yeah, but do you support it? What's your opinion on it? Well, there are people who smoke in their cars, and there was a government law against this, and it's so frustrating listening to her because she doesn't answer any bloody question. It's all about, what's your bloody opinion on this? And the most glaring example of this was, I think it was back in 2020, when she was told, and for me this was ghoulish. It was absolutely ghoulish, her response. She was told about, and I covered it in a video many months ago, maybe it was 2 years ago, I think it was over a year ago, I covered it in a video. She was told by Kay Burley of Sky News that someone who had been, and I'm trying to remember it, but it went something like this. Somebody who was on universal credit had been sanctioned, and their benefits were cut off, and they died because they didn't get access to the money they needed. And her response was something like, well, if people have, there are different types of benefits they can access, and she was like, no, but this person died because of this. What's your feelings on that? And a normal person would say something like, that's terrible. My goodness, that's a tragedy. We need to stop that from happening again. There was a mistake made, obviously, somewhere. I'm going to follow it up. I'm going to find out what happened. I'm going to make sure that this never happens again. This is a tragedy. Unfortunately, you want to be on the side of the if you want to try and play devil's advocate here, which is, I'm really going out on a limb here, but you're to say, well, these are mistakes in the system. It's unfortunately people slipped through the net. This should not have happened. We're going to fix it and make sure it never happens again. I'm going to personally follow this up as the minister, as the Secretary of State, and make sure that none of these things ever happen again. But no, she didn't say that. She said, well, there are different benefits that you can access. This person is frigging dead. They died because they were sanctioned. And your response is, well, there are different benefits you can access, and completely disconnected. Once again, this idea that some of these people don't actually have a soul. They don't actually have a heart. Because you're told somebody has died, and your automatic reaction is, I need to defend the government here. Not show any sort of empathy. I would say that she is probably a psychopath. Because that's how a psychopath responds. A psychopath has zero empathy. They don't have any feeling. They would see somebody lying on the ground, struggling, dying, and they would step over them. They may even complain because they're in the way. That's what a psychopath is, and that's what Therese Coffey is like. Now, I don't know her personally. I've never met her. The only viewing I have into her mind is what I see in these interviews. And for me, that was the quintessential, that was the perfect example of a psychopath. You've been told somebody has died here because of actions taken by your government, something that you represent. And your response is, well, there are different ways around these problems, and, there are different... Anyway. So when it comes to smoking in cars, she doesn't have a problem with this because, well, why should she? She's not going to do it, or she will do it, and she doesn't give a crap. It's like Liz Truss probably doesn't think like this. But Liz Truss doesn't probably think. That's the problem. But Therese Coffey is a psychopath. I'm convinced she's a psychopath. Because this is not normal behavior. Allegedly. I have to say allegedly, or I might get into trouble. Allegedly, she's a psychopath. Or I take it back, she's not a psychopath. Let me see. We have Gareth. Thanks so much, Gareth. Just a quick note from me. I bring happy news. Received a letter from the DWP last week. Got PIP reinstated and backdated. I will now survive the winter. Great news, Gareth. You're getting what you deserve. When you're getting what you deserve is good news, then well, I'm happy for you, and I'm happy that it has been reinstated and that it has been backdated. That's great. And I like your dark humor at the end. And thanks so much for the super chat. Thanks so much for coming on the stream tonight. I don't mean to rant about Therese Coffey here, but this demonstrates you should not have people like that in government. Who the hell votes for somebody like that? Yeah, I'll vote for Therese Coffey. What has she done? Well, nothing, but she's a Tory and I have to vote Tory. That's maybe the mentality of some people. Alistair, thanks so much for that super chat. Scotland's putting NHS in the Constitution, Max. Wow. So this is some great news because Scotland wants to have its own constitution. Obviously, if it becomes when it becomes an independent country, it will have its own constitution. And the idea that it's putting the NHS into the constitution is really important. We saw the speech from... Thanks, Alistair. We saw the speech the other day from Nicola Sturgeon, First Minister. And, one of the most important parts of that speech was how she said, we are not like the Tories. The Tories want to slam the door in people's faces when they come to this country, bundle them onto a plane and get them out of the country, while we want to welcome people in. We want to show that we're an open society. We value people. We understand that everyone who comes to Scotland brings something with them, maybe a skill or an ability or something that they can add to society. And the idea that, you come to Scotland, you become a Scot. It's not something ethnic. It's civic. You believe in Scotland. You want to, you follow the rules. You don't break the laws, but you feel that you want to contribute to Scotland. Then you are a Scot. And I think there's a real contrast, as I said in the video. There's a contrast building up between Westminster. I'm not saying England, because obviously England is not like that, but between Westminster and Edinburgh, and Holyrood, sorry. There's a real contrast there, and you have the Tories, and I really hope will happen at the next election is that the Labour Party will do a massive reverse on a lot of these policies that were put through. Some of these policies could actually would benefit Keir Starmer when he's Prime Minister, because a lot of these measures would ban protests and stuff like this against the government. I hope these will be dropped. I hope these will be repealed. I really hope that the Labour Party understand these are not popular and these are very bad policies. We're going to repeal all of them. We're going to undo the damage the Tories have done, not just economically, but also socially. It's a mammoth task, because we're not just talking about since Boris Johnson, we're talking about probably since 2010. Austerity, the racism that went with it, the policies against disabled people, people on welfare. There needs to be a real change, and it needs to start at the top, I think. That's great news about the NHS and the Scottish Constitution. Thanks, Alistair. I see Dilly Blaze is on the stream. Great to see you too. And I hope everyone is having a... Wow, we're up to almost 700 viewers. Wow, that's a new record, I think. That's great. Thanks, guys, for coming on, and remember to smash the like button. Jim Alistair doesn't like psychopaths. Are psychopaths against psychopaths? Jared, great comment. Jim Alistair doesn't like psychopaths. I heard about that. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. I saw it somewhere. So Jim Alistair is the head of the traditional Unionist Voice Party, to the right of the DUP in... I know you think to the right of the DUP is on the left. No. He's to the right of the DUP in Northern Ireland, and he's against psychopaths. You know, they not psychopaths, but psychopaths. Oh my goodness. Anyway, let's continue. Just to highlight some of the stories from today, in politics it says, as the debate on the bill to repeal the national insurance increase continues in a sparsely attended House of Commons, here's a roundup of today's news. This is from about two hours ago. Labour's Rachel Reid has accused Kwarteng of being in dangerous state of denial over the impact of the mini budget, as mortgages could rise by £500 per month. Yeah, so I think this is based on a mortgage of about £200,000 a year. Sorry, £200,000 mortgage, sorry. The fallout, because the fallout from the mini budget has caused interest rates to rise, because the Bank of England had to jump in, and it could see your average mortgage, one based on £200,000, go up by £500 a month. Obviously, that's not sustainable. So, as I said at the beginning of the stream, what will happen is, if these are for buy-to-rent, buy-to-let homes, the renters will have to pay more, or the landlord will sell up, which will create a homelessness crisis, which already exists. The IMF, I already talked about that. The chair of the Treasury Select Committee, Mel Strythe, has said that rowing back on tax cuts has to be on the table for the Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng in his fiscal statement on the 31st of October. Once again, this 31st of October, I don't know if Kwasi Kwarteng will last that long as Chancellor. In the Commons, Strythe told Kwarteng not to include measures in the fiscal update unless he's confident that he'd be able to get them through Parliament. This is sort of a good advice. Don't say things unless you know you can actually deliver on them. And this is, of course, the opposite of what Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng actually do. What they do is they say something and then they switch on their brain. And what happens then is the pound crashes, because they're like, what are you doing? Oh, sorry about that. So yeah, don't include something that you're not sure you're going to actually get through Parliament. And that's why it's important for Kwasi Kwarteng and the rest of the cabinet to sit down with the leaders of the party, the senior people in the party, and say, can we get this through Parliament? No. Okay, drop it. Can we get this through Parliament? Yes. Okay, we'll go with that. It's once again, we're going back to a stage where Parliament is taking over control of the government. Remember back in 2019 when Boris Johnson, what did he have, like he either had a very slim majority, I don't remember exactly, or he had a minority, but he couldn't get a lot of things through Parliament because Parliament was in control. Now the Brexiteers looked at that as a bad thing, because they wanted Boris Johnson just to do whatever the hell Boris Johnson wanted to do. But it showed the power of Parliament, because Boris Johnson, for example, wanted to leave the EU on the 31st of October 2019, and Parliament stopped him from doing that and extended it to January 2020, when there was time to continue negotiations for the withdrawal agreement. Now I don't know if they actually were going to leave on the on was it the 31st of October 19, but in the end, well, we don't know. A parliamentary debate has begun on whether the government will reverse the 1.25% national insurance increase introduced by Boris Johnson. The Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Chris Philip, has said it would make work more attractive. Make working more attractive. People on benefits will find out at the end of October if their payments will rise in line with inflation or end up with a real terms cut, Kwasi Kwarteng has suggested. This is really important because you have a government who are handing over money without any thought to the richest in society, reducing this, or they were planning to cut the top rate of tax from 45% to 40%, without a thought. But now when it comes to benefits, increasing benefits in line with inflation, we need to think through it. We need to look at the figures. We need some time to think about all of this. Alex Salmond, the former Scottish First Minister, has criticised the Scottish Government's decision to go to the Supreme Court today to seek permission to hold an independence referendum. I'll talk a bit more about that after. The government has not ruled out scrapping long-awaited reforms to protect private renters from the so-called no-fault evictions manifesto pledge. Has not ruled out scrapping. So they are scrapping. Probably scrapping. So these no-fault evictions are, I think they're called the Section 21 or 24, I don't remember. But what it does is it allows a landlord to decide, okay, this tenant, I don't like them, get rid of them. And it's a particular rule or law that allows them to remove, I think even without notice. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at it recently, but it's a case of normally, if you want to remove somebody, you need just cause. In this case, you don't need just cause. You just say you have to go. Don't like the color of your hair or your shoes, out you go. And I think the Tories had planned to get rid of it, but now they're saying maybe not. So this is once again, this is nothing to do with money. This is nothing to do with, can we afford it or something. This is just something that could be eliminated with the stroke of a pen. But I would imagine it's something that's not very popular with the right-wing think tanks, for example. Magic, thanks so much for that super chat. Any announced rise in benefit in October will come in April. Yes, so that's a very valid point, Magic, and thanks for that super chat, and thanks for that clarification. What happens is it will, so even if they announce it in October, it has to go to a committee, as far as I know, then it has to be signed off by the minister in January, and then it will come in April. So even if they say, we're going to give you loads of money, we're going to link it to inflation, but next April. So anyone who dies between now and April, tough luck. That'll be the Tory approach. They keep saying it's about a software system. They can't update the software until April. That's a pile of crap. If they wanted, they could do it immediately, but they decide not to. If there was an emergency, just put it through as an emergency. Okay. This idea that, the software needs months to be changed. You're changing a figure. You're changing a number. Maybe I'm simplifying it a bit, but surely if the software needs months to change a number, then there's a problem with the software. Be interesting to know who actually wrote the software, who won the contract and their connections to the Conservative Party. Maybe there are no connections, but I doubt that. Conservative and Labour peers have called for a pause on the passage of the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill through the House of Lords, while negotiations are still underway to find a political settlement to the Brexit row. So this is so in the House of Lords at the moment, they are debating, or they're looking at the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, which is an attempt to give more powers to ministers to basically ignore parts of the Northern Ireland Protocol. This would be illegal, and the House of Lords are in a bit of a bit of a spot, because they said that they can't sign off on something that is breaking international law. So I don't think they're actually going to sign off on that. It's going to probably go back to the House of Commons, or it's going to be just stuck in the House of Lords for another while. It's probably not going to, we're not going to probably see anything until at least the end of the month anyway. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has begun a restructuring of his office within the Labour Party, with his Chief of Staff Sam White departing. The party will also be leaving its Southside offices. Not sure what that's all about, but I imagine there'll be a lot of talk about who's going to replace the Chief of Staff. Whoa, guys, we're exactly on the hour, so I'm just going to take a short break. Of course, we have our funny moment, and I'll be back in just a second with some more serious stuff, but I'm sure you'll enjoy this clip.
You have a view on whether those in receipt of benefit should expect that those benefits are uprated in line of inflation, because your cabinet colleague Penny Mordaunt does, and she thinks they should.
Well, I'm a member of the government. We have a government view, but that government view has not yet been established. So therefore, I can't say what my view, my government view, is. What I can tell you is that our former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, pledged that benefits would rise with inflation. So that was my former view. But as for my current view, I can't yet say, and I will, double down on it. It might change if it's a distraction, or if it turns out that I don't know what I'm talking about.
So surely you can answer Susanna's question. It's really simple. What do you personally think, irrespective of what the eventual decision is? Do you think that benefits should be linked to inflation or not? It's a dead simple question. We'd like to know what you think.
Well, look, I'm not going to second guess what I think. That's the beauty of working in government. You work as part of a team, and you relinquish your own personal opinions and misgivings. It's about disconnecting from your conscience, and that's the sign of a healthy government. It's about blind trust, or blind trust, really. But look, it's growth, and it can see to an objective eye that what we are doing with our policies and with the economy is the opposite of that. But our Prime Minister has made very clear that it's her opponents and not her actions which is the anti-growth. We support the most vulnerable in society, and by doing that, sometimes it's to not support the most vulnerable in society. I'm afraid I can't elaborate for you how that would work, because it falls into the realms of my personal opinion.
Wonderful. Okay, let's move on. And I just want to show you this clip. This is what this clip is actually, what the clip you just saw is based on. This is Therese Coffey not knowing anything.
That's not for me to say. That's their forecasts. The Chancellor will be speaking at the end of the month. I'm just not going to get into hypotheticals, Kay. The Chancellor is working on that.
You're talking about ditching home targets for affordable homes. Why are you doing that?
I'm not aware of any of that.
So that isn't true.
I'm not aware of that policy, but if you want to ask Simon Clarke about policies...
Well, you're the Deputy Prime Minister, with all due respect. Has that target been scrapped?
I'm not aware any target's been scrapped.
So is it going to go ahead then?
I'm not aware any target's been scrapped. Well, it's news to me as well, and I suggest that...
But you're the Deputy Prime Minister, you have to have views on these things.
I've just been sat here for the last 10 to 15 minutes.
You weren't expecting it?
It's a matter, dare I say it, for the Chancellor. I'm sure that you can follow up with the Chancellor today. I'm not aware of...
So it's not something that's been discussed around the...
I'm not aware of specific things like that, no.
OK. How interesting.
How interesting indeed. I am not aware of that. I'm not aware of this. I'm not aware of... What's the point in you being the Deputy Prime Minister? Like, you're not some intern. You're the Deputy bloody Prime Minister. Anyway. Coffee not aware of the day of the week. Johan, thanks so much for that super chat. It's simple math, Max. To lower the taxes, you need to save somewhere. So, whoops. Losing your chat. Okay. It's simple math, Max, is to lower the tax, you need to save somewhere. So I can see saving on inflation, saving on benefits. I think big problem is that when it comes to benefits, or welfare in general, pensions are the biggest portion of the welfare budget, not universal credit or anything like that. It's actually pensions, and the government won't touch that, but they will of course reduce benefits. And I think the reason that they're holding off on saying anything at the moment, I am very fearful of what they're going to do is they're going to reduce, or they're going to cut benefits in a sense. They're not going to give an increase in benefits, saying, oh look, we can't afford it. And they'll point to, well, this is taxpayer money, we can't waste taxpayer money on benefits. This is the old argument from the Tories. It's always the same one, trying to divide the public, saying, oh look, the taxpayers are the ones paying, people on benefits are taking, when there's supposed to be a social safety net, and many people who are on benefits are actually paying in as well. But we live in a society where we want to support people who are struggling, people who can't work. There's no ethical justification for removing benefits from people who can't work, people who are ill, people who want to work. There's no reason to do that. But of course they won't say that. They'll say we're getting rid of benefits for people who don't want to work, people who are lazy. Look at all these jobs available and nobody wants to do them. That's the framing that they create. Thanks, Johan. And I'm afraid what they're going to try and do is cut public services. So they're going to reduce money for the NHS. The NHS is already struggling. The NHS has a very limited budget. They've had to pay the pay rises through their existing budget, which means that there's less money available. There's also less money available for recruiting new staff. There's a shortage of staff, about 150,000, I think, the NHS is missing. They need to hire tens of thousands of doctors, nurses, and other staff, and they can't because they don't have the funding available. They can't build new hospitals or build new infrastructure because they don't have the money either. Even though Boris Johnson promised 40 new hospitals, it's more like 20. No, was it 44? Maybe new ones, and then the rest are some upgrades or a paint job or something. And then we have also people who can't work because they're carers. They're looking after somebody who's disabled or somebody who has health or mental health problems. These are people completely forgotten by the state as well. It's almost as if, well, if you're looking after somebody, well, then you're doing it out of the love of, out of the kindness of your heart. So you don't actually need money for that. That's the mentality as well. So, as you said, is there a cut? Well, maybe there is, and we're going to see another era of austerity.
The government balance the books.
Arriving back in Westminster and walking into a crisis.
There's still a risk to the economy, sir.
The Cabinet descends on Downing Street hours after another emergency Bank of England intervention. Huge spending cuts needed now to balance the books and restore the trust of the markets. Ministers debating where the axe will fall.
Will it be austerity by the back door, Simon Clarke? How can you help the most vulnerable, Chloe Smith, if budgets are tight? 15% cuts to departments, Mr Buckland. Do you think the public sector can wear that?
MPs return to Parliament today, desperate for answers. Borrowing costs rising, interest rates up, pension funds on the brink, faith in government shaken, all since they were last here. The Bank of England now warning of a material risk to financial stability. A Chancellor under fire.
It does not need to be this way. So will the Chancellor now put aside his pride, do the right thing for our country, end this trickle-down nonsense and reverse the budget?
So which of the tax cuts? Do they want to stop the basic rate, the cut in the basic rate?
You're the minister. You're supposed to be answering the questions, not asking the questions. And of course, where the hell is the Speaker of the House here? Why isn't he saying, no, your job is to answer the questions, not ask questions? If you want the Labour Party can take over and they can do the job, once again, I know it's nice theatre, for the Chancellor to stand up and, ask questions of the opposition. But that's not how it works, and he knows that.
Tory MPs fear having to justify any cuts to their voters.
Confirm to this House that the government will not balance the forthcoming tax cuts on the back of the poorest people in our country.
As we make these decisions that my honourable friend refers to, of course we're going to balance considerations of fairness.
Fairness hard to achieve when spending cuts could exceed £60 billion a year. But it's that or another U-turn for Liz Truss.
Either a huge screeching about turn on tax, so raising taxes to fill this hole, or some remarkable levels of spending cuts. If he wants to balance the books off the back of cuts in public spending, a really big return to those days of the early 2010s when we had severe austerity and cuts across public spending.
But this is the opposite of what you should be doing in a recession. You should be pumping money into the economy, not taking money out. And it's important to remember, for every pound that the government spend, it creates about 3 in the economy. So if you want to build new infrastructure, that creates £1 spent creates about £3 in the economy. That's why it's so important that you don't cut public spending. You increase public spending in this moment. Now, how do they achieve that? Well, they have to tax people who aren't paying tax at the moment, or they have to borrow. Now, if they borrow, it's going to be extremely expensive. So it makes fiscal sense, economic sense, to tax the rich. There are billionaires in Britain. There are people with more money than they could ever spend in a lifetime. And it's sitting in bank accounts, it's sitting in property, it's sitting in buildings that they... What do the rich do? They buy property, and then it just sits there. They don't live in it. Nobody lives in it. It's just bought as an asset, something that I can put my taxes against, something I can sell in the future. It's something that exists in a portfolio. It's not actually adding anything to society. These people need to be taxed. The president of the US, following the Second World War, he increased taxes on the rich up to 90%. It was 90 or 95%. I think it was about 90%. Did that mean the millionaires and billionaires, well, they weren't billionaires at the time, but millionaires moved out? No. They understood that they have to contribute to society. They have benefited hugely from a booming economy, and they have to give something back. And this created a boom in the United States, where the standards of living in the 1950s increased dramatically. Not for everyone, but for the majority. That's about taxing correctly, fairly, and redistributing the wealth.
The scale of spending cuts in the offing, that's months of the most difficult decisions a government can make, all compressed into 3 weeks and announced on October the 31st.
And you have the worst people possible here. Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, 2 idiots who don't know their arse from their elbow.
No wonder there are tensions all over Whitehall about what to
Kwasi the Bean Chancellor
do, be it on defence or whether or not to keep the manifesto migration cap. And once the decisions are made, she then has to keep her party with her.
One Tory MP told Sky News the government has the priorities wrong and should do another U-turn.
Well, it may well be that perhaps corporate taxation will have to rise or stay at a level higher than the Chancellor would have liked initially. That will bring money in, and that will be one thing that will be sensible. This is a matter of timing, and I think that it's clear that some of that needs to wait.
Decisions here driven by bigger forces than politics. Ministers hemmed in by market nerves and the cost of borrowing. It's not clear how much the people in Parliament are in the driving seat.
Well, the people in Parliament can remove Liz Truss. They've decided not to yet. Because Liz Truss is there thanks to their support. So if the Conservative MPs decide we've had enough of her, they send their letters to the 1922 committee, and then the 1922 committee change some of the rules, because at the moment I think she's there isn't a vote of confidence against Truss until next year. They could change the rules. They have the power to do that. They change the rules and they have a vote on Liz Truss's government, and they decide to bring it down. Now they'd have to extend that to Parliament as well, because they can say there's no confidence in the government. In Liz Truss as Prime Minister, she could be replaced, but replaced by who? Who would take over from Liz Truss? Who would be mad enough, apart from Boris Johnson, who would be mad enough to take over this poison chalice? I don't think there's anyone. Because you'd have to clean house. And I don't think anyone wants to take over that. And you'd actually have to act more as a technocrat government. That could be a solution. That could be a way for the Tories to get out of this mess. For them to appoint a technocratic government. Now, I don't think this has really existed in the UK. It has existed in other countries in Europe, where it's not really politicians who are in charge, but it's experts. So what the technocratic government do is they know that, okay, we are here just to fix this problem, and we're not running for election or anything like that. We're here just to do this, and we go to Parliament whenever we need to change a law or to introduce new legislation or whatever, and they present it to Parliament, and Parliament normally just rubber stamps it. Both parties agree to it. They could probably include members of their party in this technocratic government, and they push through legislation. This could be a way around this problem, but it would mean the Conservatives giving up power in a way. But I don't know if they'd be willing to do that. This would be probably the best outcome, bar a general election. It would allow them to do certain things to make sure that the country is running, because the longer Liz Truss stays there, the worse things are going to get. So we're looking at it from a very high level, and then there's also the very low level, and this is from Channel 4 News about how loan sharks prey on very poor people. So we've seen how the Bank of England is trying to fix problems. Well, these are some of the problems at the very bottom, the economic scale.
Open the door now! Get down here now, stairs!
6:30 a.m. in a residential street on the outskirts of Manchester. An early call from the illegal money lending team. Backed by officers from Greater Manchester Police, they arrived mob-handed to prevent any evidence being destroyed.
So I'm arresting you on suspicion of illegal money lending and money laundering. You don't have to say anything, but may I have my defence? You don't mention one question. We've had an allegation that you're lending money to people and collecting it back with interest, and that's why I'm here. What we're going to do is we're going to look through the phone. If there's nothing on it, then that's the end of it, isn't it? Mate, what I'm telling you, you've been arrested, right, on suspicion of illegal money lending and money laundering. If you haven't done it, there's no problem, you'll be investigated, and that'll be the end of the matter.
Wait until we get solicited and then we'll talk.
Okay. It is an offence for you to refuse to give me the PIN number for your phone when asked. I'm just telling you.
I've never been in trouble with the police for nothing, so can I speak to a solicitor?
This is part of an ongoing operation against suspected illegal money lenders who not only demand extortionate rates, but sometimes use violence and intimidation. And the fear is, with the cost of living crisis, this is a problem that is getting worse. Before this year, the most common reason for borrowing was one-off expenses, white goods or a car breakdown. Since January, according to the latest figures shared with Channel 4 News, half of loan shark victims in England borrow to pay for the basics, like fuel and food. Tony Quigley, the man in charge of the morning raid, has headed up this illegal money lending team for 2 decades and says he's alarmed by what he's seeing.
Clearly, with the energy rise, that's just going to get worse. The pressure that is being applied is immense. What we're seeing is, the phone calls, the knocking on the door, the constant harassment for what was initially a small debt. And we've seen people that have taken £250 off an illegal lender and ended up owing £90,000 according to the illegal lender, because they've doubled it and doubled it and doubled it and doubled it.
These are not normal people. They're dangerous.
Billy, who lives in a remote part of South Wales, says he knows just what price the loan sharks can exact for their service. And it's paid not just in money, but fear.
They opened the door themselves, made their way up, dragged me out of bed, put me in, I presume, either the back of a car or transit or something. I was driven to a mountain, handed a shovel, told to dig.
He was told to jump in the hole and warned that that's where he would end up if he paid late again. And the threats didn't stop there.
And he says, "You've got 2 kids, haven't you?" And he says, "Yeah." He said, "It'd be a shame if somebody run over one of them, wouldn't it?"
Billy says he borrowed more than £30,000 from loan sharks over the years. He says he understands what it's like to feel there's no other choice, but begs people not to do it.
They don't care about you. They don't care about your kids. They don't care what's in your home, what's not in your home, because they'll take everything you got. You know? And then some. Don't use loan sharks, please. I'm begging him. Please don't use loan sharks, please. Please, I'm begging him.
While illegal lending is an age-old crime, the methods used are moving with the times. Investigators say social media is being used by loan sharks to find, threaten and control people in debt. Here's one exchange from a recent investigation by the illegal money lending team. The names have been changed.
I know someone, but he charges more than you borrow, and he comes round if you don't pay. He's very, very last resort. I heard someone didn't pay him. Next thing, they had a broken kneecap. Scary. He might come, or his boys. I've just seen Danny, and he wanted to send some lads round and give you a talking. He was fuming and going off on one. I told him you'd pay tomorrow.
So, first of all, it depends on how much you want to borrow, and then we would go through the normal checks.
This is where the government want people to turn to instead of loan sharks. There are credit unions like this one in Stockport all over the country that aim to offer safe borrowing for people who would struggle to get credit elsewhere.
Look, I don't mean to inject something into this, but this is another argument for a UBI, a universal basic income, where you would provide, the government, the state would provide people with £1,000 a month or €1,000 a month, $1,000 a month to survive, to get them out of things. And fewer people would get involved in these things because, as we heard at the beginning of this report, it used to be for white goods. It used to be for car repairs. It used to be for maybe buying a new car even. But now it's essentials, food, heating bills. Like the temptation people have, of course, you go to the bank and they say, we're not going to give you money to pay your electricity bill or buy food. And you hear about somebody on the estate or somebody, in the area who lends money, and you're desperate. And I really fear what's going to happen is, as we get closer to Christmas, more and more parents are going to feel pressured into taking out loans to buy gifts for their children because they don't want them to have a bad Christmas. They'll feel, look, just borrow it now and we'll pay it back over the rest of the year. That used to be the case, but the fact that people are borrowing money to buy food, to pay bills, that's why it's important that there needs to be proper support in place. If people are doing this, it means the state has failed. It's like food banks. If there are food banks, it's a demonstration of a failure of government. Warm banks are the next one. Warm banks where people go to keep warm during the winter because the government has failed to protect people from these energy price rises. There was an opportunity to introduce a windfall tax on the energy companies, and Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng said no, we're not going to go down that road. Which probably leads to the point that they're probably not going to increase corporation tax as part of their adjustment at the end of October, because if they're not going to tax windfalls, have a windfall tax on energy profits, they're not going to have an increase in corporation tax. UBI would be sucked up by landlords and energy companies. It's possible, but But people's incomes are being sucked up by landlords at the moment. People are paying massive amount in rent anyway. So credit is not usually that difficult to access unless you have court judgments, criminal record, or gambling addiction. Even criminals don't lend to poor people who will never repay. Ring Ali, thanks so much for that super chat. Andy Burnham wants to pilot a UBI in Greater Manchester. That'd be great. I'd love to have Andy Burnham on to talk about that. I think he's too big of a fish for me, but it'd be great to have somebody from the program on to talk about that, because I keep saying that I want to get somebody on about UBI, and it'd be great if it was somebody from the UK, because a lot of the people are from the US, but it'd be great to have somebody on from the UK. It'd be great if it was somebody from the this project in Manchester. So if anyone knows anyone who's involved, let me know, and I can try and get to have a chat with them, because this is what's needed to move away from maybe a welfare system and move towards a UBI. Of course, making sure that their public services are available as well. Thanks so much, Reagan Elite. So this is of course, a massive concern.
But there is.
Anyway, I just wanted to touch on that. Moving forward, just keep an eye on the time. As we saw earlier about the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, I should say. It says here, peers expressed concern about Northern Ireland Protocol Bill as it begins passage through the House of Lords. Conservative and Labour peers have called for a pause on the passage of the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill through the House of Lords, while negotiations are underway to find a political settlement to the Brexit row. But Lord Cormac, a parliamentarian for more than 50 years, told the House neither he nor Lady Chapman, Labour, would seek a vote tonight, and would be working on further arguments to pause the bill before it returns to the committee stage on the 25th of October. Cormac and Chapman both tabled amendments to the second reading motion calling for the bill to be paused, but the amendments will not be pushed to a vote, and the second reading is expected to go through on the nod, which is normal practice in the Lords. What is this about? As I said before, this is about adding measures that will allow the House of Commons to give ministers the ability to undo parts of the Northern Ireland Protocol. I don't know why this would actually go through on the nod in the House of Lords, maybe, but I think they're trying to slow it down, because they're saying at the moment there's negotiations taking place between the European Union and the UK government, and those need to be given the time necessary to bear some sort of fruit, and then we can go ahead with it. There is, of course, a hope that it will just be dropped. There is a possibility that it will pass on to royal assent. It will be created law, but it will never actually be used. Freckle Punny, thanks so much for that super chat. This is like Ken Loach film, Raining Stones. I want to see that. I haven't seen that, so I will check that out. There are some wonderful films I've been trying to see, but they're not on the main platforms like Amazon Prime or Netflix. So it's and also YouTube. You can watch movies on YouTube as well. But a lot of really good low budget movies you can't find online, unfortunately. So but I will check out that Raining Stones. Ken Loach, a wonderful director. Anyway, let's move on to Scotland. What's happening in Scotland? Or, well, what's happening with the Supreme Court? So it says here, Supreme Court urged to throw out Scottish independence poll case. The UK's highest court has been asked to throw out a request to settle the festering issue of whether Holyrood can hold a referendum on Scottish independence without Westminster's approval. The Supreme Court was told that the attempt by Scottish ministers to win the court's approval for a referendum bill was premature and theoretical by Sir James Edley KC, a senior lawyer acting for the UK government. Edley was speaking after Scotland's top law officer Dorothy Bain KC urged the court to give Nicola Sturgeon, Scotland's nationalist First Minister, permission to table a bill that would authorise Holyrood to hold that referendum in October next year. Bain, the Lord Advocate, which is like the Attorney General, said the Scottish independence question was of exceptional public importance to the people of Scotland and to the people of the United Kingdom. It is central to a manifesto commitment endorsed by the people of Scotland. That being, of course, that it was part of the SNP's manifesto. Scottish voters have consistently elected MPs and MSPs who backed independence, she said. The late Lord Mackay of Dromadoon, a former Lord Advocate and senior appeal judge, had correctly described that as a festering issue that had to be resolved. 3 successive Conservative Prime Ministers have refused to authorise a second independence referendum after the SNP lost the first one in 2014, arguing that only Westminster has the power to approve one under the Scotland Act 1998 that set up the Scottish Parliament. See, the problem, so I'm not an expert on this, and I should have an expert on to talk about this. There are lots of experts probably in the chat who may begin tearing their hair out as I start to speak. But it's so what's happening here? So Scotland, the SNP and the Green Party, who make up the Scottish government, want to hold a second referendum. They, under the rules of the Scotland Act, cannot do that because it's a reserved matter. So there are reserved matters and there are devolved matters. So a devolved matter means something that the Scottish Parliament can do, Scottish government can do, but reserved matters are ones that there are things that the Westminster government have control over. So things like the media, for example, energy, welfare, as far as I know, is a reserved matter. The NHS is a devolved matter. Education is a devolved matter. So there are certain matters which are devolved to the Scottish Parliament and ones which are reserved. Now, when it comes to a second referendum, it's not clear if it's. Some people will say it is clear, others will say it's not clear, but it seems not to be clear that it's either a reserved matter or a devolved matter. Because if it's a constitutional issue that affects the United Kingdom, then it's a reserved matter. But a second referendum would take place in Scotland, so people would argue that's a devolved matter. But anyway, broadcasting is reserved, as is time and space. So what the Scottish government are doing is they're going to the Supreme Court to decide whether Scotland could have a second referendum. So the government in Scotland could issue a second referendum. If the Supreme Court come back and say yes, that is under the jurisdiction of the Scottish Parliament, then they'll go ahead with the referendum on the 19th of October, I think it is, next October, October next year, in 2023. If the Supreme Court come back and say, no, this is a reserved power, a reserved issue, a reserved matter, then the SNP have said, and probably the Green Party, I don't remember the Green Party said it, but at least the SNP have said that they will run the next election on the single issue of independence. So if the people of Scotland at the next election, I should say, vote for the SNP, they're voting for independence. Now people say, "Oh, that's not possible." Well, that is possible because do you remember some years ago in 2019 there was a party called the Brexit Party, and they ran on the single issue of Brexit, we want our Brexit. We want to protect Brexit. We want to get Brexit done. That was the Brexit Party. Boris Johnson, in a sense, ran the election in the same way. Boris Johnson's main manifesto pledge was getting Brexit done. So if Boris Johnson and the Tories could get Brexit done as the single issue, yes, they talked about the NHS or whatever, but their main issue, the principal issue of Boris Johnson's government at the time, or party at the time, was getting Brexit done. Nigel Farage's Brexit Party was getting Brexit done. Then I don't see why the SNP and the Green Party couldn't say our principal manifesto pledge is independence, because then you wouldn't need a referendum. I'm not a fan of referendums, because the problem with many of these referendums, as we've seen with Brexit, is the public are not properly informed. Now, I don't think a second referendum would end up like the Brexit one, because obviously the problem with the Brexit referendum, and this is something I'd like to ask a Brexiteer, is you had Daniel Hannan, or whatever way you pronounce his surname. Daniel was on one side saying, nobody's talking about leaving the single market, which would imply we're not going to leave the single market. And then on the other hand, you had Nigel Farage saying, yeah, of course we're going to leave the single market. Sticking with Nigel Farage for a moment, he said we would get a Norway-style deal. Then he said we'd get a Swiss-style deal. Then he said, no, we don't want a Swiss-style deal. Nobody wants a Swiss-style deal. So that's one of the problems, okay? You ask a Brexiteer, did you know what you were voting for? Whatever answer they'll give you, it was a lie. Unless it's, no, I didn't know what I was voting for. Because they didn't know what they were voting for. No one knew what they were voting for, because what they got was different. There was no mention of leaving the single market and the customs union. When it was asked as an issue, no, of course we're not, or yes, we are. Not understanding what that actually meant, and in many cases not actually understanding what the single market was. But when it comes to the Scottish independence vote, I think it's going to be a case of, I have a feeling what's going to happen is the Supreme Court are going to reject it and say, no, you can't have a second referendum. And it will go to an election. So it will be at the next election. Now, the Tories have attempted to throw some obstacles in the way by saying, well, if you want to go down the election route, then you need to win, I was it 50% of the vote. That would not make any sense, because it's it would be moving the goalposts. When it came to Brexit, it wasn't necessary 50% of the vote. No, what was it? Not 50%. No, it wasn't the vote. It had to be. They wanted to create a scenario where you need at least 50% of the electorate. Or no, it's actually more than, I don't remember. So the Tories wanted to bring out some requirement that you have 50% of the electorate come out and vote. But when it came to the Brexit referendum, it wasn't 50% of the electorate. It was 52-48 of the people who voted, but there was no quorum. There wasn't a threshold that required a certain number of people to come out and vote. The Tories seem to want to do that when it comes to the next election in Scotland, and I don't think they can do that. They can't dictate that, and then they would have to apply it to all of the United Kingdom. So they can't do that. But it would be good to get somebody back, Indy Truck Davy or Random Scottish History back once again to talk about this, because I'm the blind leading the blind. I don't know that much about it. I'm not well versed on it. I'm just going from what I've heard, but it does seem what's going to happen is either the Supreme Court will say, yes, you can have a second referendum, and then that will take place next October, or they will say no, and it will go to, well, if you want Scottish independence, you need to vote for the SNP because that's their manifesto, or other parties that will put it at the centre of their manifesto. Alex Salmond, I disagree with him. What he has come out and said recently about this is that there should be a renaming of the parties. So it should be SNP United Party, Alba United Party, Green United Party. So they should put it in their name and form some sort of coalition. But I think that would be a distraction. I think it would actually just create confusion. And people say, what is this United Party, or something like that, or Independence Party, so it's SNP Independence, Alba Independence. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I just think I'm getting confused on it, so I imagine many people would be as well. So I don't think it would actually help. Just put it in the manifesto and make it very clear when you're voting that you know what you're voting for. And I think, we're beyond the stage where people don't know what the SNP stand for. He needs to wish, to be honest. I think Alex Salmond is trying to steal some of the glory. I think he wants to, he sees, I started the ball rolling. Somebody picked it up and ran, 500 miles with it. I want some of the attention again. Remember me. Remember, I was important at the beginning. Don't forget about me. I think there's a bit of that there. A bit of narcissism, maybe. Alistair, thanks so much for that super chat. If it's a no, Max, we go to the UN courts. I think there has been, of course, talk of that as well. So there will be, they'll put in a petition in the United Nations and say, look, we want self-determination, and the United Nations should respect that. I think the only, perhaps, I don't know if this is true, but perhaps a problem with that would be the UK government could veto it. So they could try and stop it. Anyway, guys, 600 viewers. Wow, I think that's a new record. That's wonderful. So I want to say thank you to everyone who came on tonight. Thanks so much for the super chat. Greatly appreciated. We're almost at the end of the stream. We have our one for the road. Remember, if you're a member of Patreon, you can follow later on the post-stream chat. Do join in on that if you can. Otherwise, I'll see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. But don't go, because we have our funny video just before we finish for tonight. And this one is probably one of the best ever. I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
It was revealed this week that the government has cancelled its planned campaign to encourage people to save energy. Our defunct Public Information Films correspondent, Jonathan Goodenough, has more. Yes, that's right. Apparently, the Prime Minister Liz Truss shelved the campaign from Jacob Rees-Mogg's department because she doesn't want to tell people what to do. Is that because no one would listen to her? That is the working theory. However, we've managed to get hold of leaked, partially edited footage of the campaign video. Peasants! People of England! People of the United Kingdom! Winter is coming. It's about to get nippy. Is it? Really? It's about to get as cold as a witch's tit. Worse. But never fear, our energy bill will help with your energy bills. But I like puns. Yes, we're borrowing huge amounts of money, then giving it to energy companies, and targeting our help at those who need it the most. People with massive houses. The thing is that Vladimir Putin is using energy as a weapon of war. So by saving energy, you're helping Ukraine. Don't think too hard about why we were so reliant on his energy in the first place. There was probably nothing we could have done about that. So here are some great tips on how to save energy and save money. Using an oven is very energy intensive, so why not try preparing some lovely winter salads? Icicles are surprisingly nutritious. If you can't find an air fryer, just blow on your food very, very quickly. Eventually you'll feel lightheaded enough to eat anything. It's much more efficient to have a shower than a bath. So if you fancy having a bath, why not fill it using the shower? It's just common sense. Instead of turning on electric lights, why not light some candles and imagine you're in an episode of House of the Dragon? And if you still need to stay warm, just engage in some light incest. If you can't afford candles, just enjoy your time in the dark. Listen to The Wireless, not podcasts. You don't want to be mistaken for part of the anti-growth coalition. Feeling a bit chilly? Why not re-watch the coverage of the mini-budget and its financial aftermath? That should put you in a nice boiling rage which will keep you warm for hours. If you see the Prime Minister on the television, just turn it off. That will stop you wanting to throw things at the screen and having to buy a new one. Are we sure about this? Remember to unplug anything you don't need. Phones, laptops, elderly relatives. You might win a house. Worried about heating your house, but also turning on a refrigerator? Well, make your mind up. Do you want things to be hot or cold? Compromise by keeping your meat in a bum bag. Remember, it's cheaper to heat the person than the room. So strap on those radiators. Don't go on holiday, go to the library. Did we not shut all of those? No? You'll stay nice and warm, and you'll be able to read guidebooks for places you wanted to go but you can't afford anymore because the currency's buggered. If all else fails, just imagine you're still in the 19th century. It works for me and I feel fine. Are we done? I said I'd be home for tea and Nanny does not like to be kept waiting. Explosive stuff. The government emailed us this statement. Tell them it's just made up footage using deepfakes or something. Obviously put that in your own words, don't just send this verbatim. Thank you, Jonathan. Next up, as Nicola Sturgeon is attacked for saying that she detests the Tories, we ask, as the government crashes the economy, plans on wrecking the environment, and dreams of deporting asylum seekers, is detest strong enough, or should she really have added a swear word?
I love that. Strap a radiator to you. And the libraries. Didn't we close those? So guys, we have a super chat from David. Thanks so much, David. I think the court will sit on the fence and say it's a political matter. It's an ecumenical matter. That's probably another outcome. So they won't say yes, they won't say no. They say nothing to do with us. Which would probably put it back in the SNP's court, where they would probably, I would hope they would go with a vote at the next election, because it's more likely to succeed that way. So guys, I want to say thank you so much for coming on tonight. Thanks for all of the super chats. Thanks for your support. And I'll see you on Friday. Same bad time, same bad channel. And remember to stay safe. Take care. Good night.